Hey everybody, welcome back to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, visionrecordingstudios.com, and here on my YouTube channel. And today we're going to do another Universal Audio plugin look and review. This week we're going to take a look at the 1176 compressor collection. The 1176 is one of the most sought after compressors that's ever been built in hardware form, and Universal Audio are the creators of the 1176 in hardware form and have done an amazing job in their emulation of their own hardware. So in this review, in this little presentation, we're going to take a look at some history of the 1176, talk about the controls and the differences between the three that you see before you, and then we're going to jump over into the DAW and take a listen to some sound examples to get you kind of familiar on what the 1176 can do. So in the 1176 compressor collection, it contains three different versions of the 1176. The first one being the 1176 LN, LN standing for low noise Rev E, which is built in 1970 to 1973. The 1176 Rev A was built in 1968, which is the one in the middle, the silver face, or some people call it the blue stripe. And then the 1176 AE, meaning Anniversary Edition, was built in 2008. And these are the hardware versions of this. So like with all my Universal Audio plugins and any of these analog vintage style plugins, I like to do a little bit of a history lesson to kind of bring people up to speed on a little bit of the key points of the history of these plugins and its hardware form and how these plugins kind of came to be. And one of the reasons why I really love Universal Audio and what they do, and I think they make the best emulations of the analog hardware units on the market, hands down. They're my favorite. They're my go-to. And one of the reasons why I think they do such a great job in plug-in emulation is they were actually, before plugins were even around, they were actually, they still to this day create and build hardware analog vintage pieces of gear like the 1176, like the LA2A. So who better to emulate these old vintage pieces of gear than the actual people actually build the hardware. But let's take a little history lesson, if you will, of the 1176. So the first 1176 was designed in 1967 by the founder of Universal Audio, Bill Putnam. It's the first true peak limiter to feature an all transistor circuitry and FET gain reduction. And the original 1176 had an extremely fast takt time of 20 milliseconds. So Bill Putnam, the founder of Universal Audio, who today makes all these wonderful plugins, is actually the one who designed the first 1176. By the third revision, Rev C of the 1176, URI engineer Bill Plunkett added features to reduce the noise of the 1176, and that was the birth of the 1176 LN, the LN meaning low noise, which is the blackface version, which is probably the most recognizable that we'll take a look at in a few minutes. And since that time, in the hardware version, there have been 13 revisions of the 1176 since that time. So since 1967, there have been 13 revisions of the 1176. And the first 1176 plugin was released by Universal Audio in 2001 on the UAD1 platform, and was the first plugin released along with the LA2A compressor. So in 2001, when Universal Audio started getting into the plugin emulation business, as the technology was changing, they were the first to do the 1176, their own design, and they released that with the LA2A kind of as a kind of a twofer. So you got the 1176 and the LA2A together as part of the Classics bundle, which was back on the UAD1, and I've been using Universal Audio since the UAD1, and they've come a long way. And again, they still, I think, make some of the best plugins for the old analog hardware on the market. So the first one we're going to take a look at here is the UA 1176 Rev A, or the blue stripe. And some of the key kind of points about each one of these compressors and how they distinguish from each other. The blue stripe here is really great for distortion. The more you crank the input, the more of kind of a high-end distortion you kind of get from when that's desired. And it has a fast attack and a fast release. And it's great for guitar and bass if you're looking to add a little bit of grit or even a loud screaming vocal. You push the input kind of heavy on this particular model, and you're going to get a little bit more of that nice distortion characteristic with the blue stripe. The second one being the 1176 LN for low noise Rev E. This is probably the more recognizable one. And if you're not really familiar with this old hardware, the 1176, when you see this one, this is probably the one that you recognize more than the other two. It's the more popular one. It has a lower noise, as we said earlier. It has a smoother attack and release than the blue stripe. And it's really great. It's kind of a utility compressor. It's really great for all instruments and vocals. A lot of vocals really sound great through this compressor, but just about everything sounds great through this compressor. And then the 1176 AE, the Anniversary Edition, built in 2008, has a little bit of an addition compared to the other two, in that it has a slow attack mode of 10 milliseconds. It has a 2-to-1 ratio on this particular model, where on the other two, the lowest ratio was 4-to-1. And this has the same kind of response time with the attacker release as the Rev A, as the Rev A model. So the difference between this one and the blackface that we just looked at is you have a 2-to-1 ratio, and you have a super slow attack time of 10 milliseconds. And then also, as part of the 1176 compressor collection family, prior to the new 3 compressors we just looked at, there used to be what's called the legacy model, the 1176 LN Legacy and the 1176 SE Legacy, the black and the silver face here. And this came out in 2001 when they first developed the 1176 plugin on the UAD1 format. And the difference between this and the new collection that was released a few years ago, the ones we just looked at, people wanted, well, really, what's the difference? Well, the difference is really simple, because back in the day of the UAD1, the 2 plugins that you're looking at, the technology and the DSP power wasn't invented yet in order to really emulate the entire compressor from beginning to end. So you can see a little note down here in the orange text that the input transformers and the I/O distortion characteristics, were not modeled in the legacy models, just because the DSP power wasn't there in order to do that. But on the new 3 compressors we just looked at, the Blue Stripe, the Anniversary Edition, and the LN version, the newer versions of this, all of the input transformers and I/O distortion characteristics are modeled. So you have a complete end-to-end emulation of the hardware unit, whereas on these legacy models, you're really just emulating the compressors, not the input and the output transformers. And so that's the difference between the two. Now, the legacy models will have a lot lower DSP usage on your Universal Audio card. So therefore, you could put more instances across your mix because you're not chewing up as much DSP, but you're not getting the full-on emulation as you are with the new collection. And so those are the major differences. So let's talk about the basic controls of an 1176. And again, we'll take a look at this in the DAW, but I just want to kind of run through these quickly. So you have, all of them are laid out exactly the same way. You have an input dial on the far left, which adjusts the amount of gain reduction as well as the relative threshold. So as you turn up the input, you're pushing more signal into the compressor and it's lowering the threshold to give you more compression. If you rotate the knob clockwise, you'll to increase the compression amount. So the more signal you push into the compressor, the more the threshold's going to drop, and the more compression you're going to get. Right to the right of the input knob is the output, and that determines the final output level of the signal leaving the 1176. Once the desired amount of limiting or compression is achieved, with the use of the input control, the output control can be used to make up any gain loss due to the gain reduction. So think of it as a makeup gain. That's really what that means. So the more compression you have, the volume is going to drop because you're going to have gain reduction, and you're going to compensate with that with the output. The attack time sets the amount of time it takes for the 1176 to respond to an incoming signal and begin gain reduction. Pretty simple. The 1176 attack time is adjustable from 20 microseconds to 800 microseconds. Those are both extremely fast attack times. So the thing about an 1176 is even on its slowest setting, it's a pretty fast attack time. So, and the thing that's unique about the 1176 compared to other compressors with their attack and releases, when you turn the attack or the release time to number 7 or fully clockwise, it's a fast setting. And when you turn it down to number 1 or counterclockwise, it's a slow setting, which is usually backwards. Usually it's the other way around. So you always got to keep that in mind. Number 7 is a fast attack and a fast release. Number 1 is a slow attack or slow release. The release time is the 1176 release time is adjustable between 50 milliseconds to 1100 milliseconds. Again, number 7 would be fast, number 1 would be slow. The ratio, we have 4 ratio push button switches on the 1176 that determine the compression ratio of the plugin. Now, the addition of the 1176 AE, the Anniversary Edition, there's an added ratio button for a 2-to-1 ratio. Remember, the other ones only have a 4, an 8, a 12, and a 20, but the AE model has a 2. The 20-to-1 ratio is typically used for when peak limiting is desired, while lower ratios are typically used for general dynamic range compression. So anything above an 8 to a 12-to-1 ratio, once you get to 20-to-1, you're really limiting. Usually you're using 4 and 8. 12 is kind of on the fence. 4-to-1 ratio, 8-to-1 ratio, you're doing basic compression. 12 to 20, you're doing more limiting. And then there's also a special feature on the hardware unit, which is also available on all the plugins, called an all button mode. When you use the all button mode, you use that a lot on drums or ambient room mics, where it can be used to make a bass guitar or a guitar sound more dirty. You get more distortion. And when you put it on vocals, it kind of gives you more that in your face, kind of a slightly distorted type of a sound. And the all button mode, the ratio is between a 12 to 20 to 1. And I'll show you how to do that when we get into the DAW. You'll hold the shift key down, click on the 20 to 1 button, and all the buttons will be depressed. So on the hardware, you would take 4 fingers and press all buttons in at the same time, and that gives you kind of an extra, really great for parallel compression, a really kind of a distorted, kind of a gritty sound. And here finally is the picture of the 3 hardware units. So again, you can see that the anniversary edition on the top has an extra button for a 2 to 1, 4 to 1, 8 to 1, and 20 to 1 ratio, where the other ones do not have a 2 to 1 ratio. They only have 4 to 1 as the lowest ratio setting. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the DAW. I'm going to show you some sound examples of how to use the 1176 and kind of the sound characteristics and the differences between them. So stay tuned, come right back for the sound examples. Okay, welcome into our DAW session here, and we're going to take a look at the 1176 and the 3 different models we spoke about in the presentation section of this review. On acoustic guitar and maybe some female vocals, and maybe we'll do it on a drum bus to show you some parallel compression. So right now we have an acoustic guitar kind of soloed up here, and we're going to take a look at first the 1176 Blue Stripe or the 1176 Rev A, either one, however you want to call it. And we got it on its default setting right here. One great thing about Universal Audio's plugins is they got a ton of great presets too by famous mix engineers and recording engineers have developed a bunch of different presets. And these presets are extremely usable. And maybe we'll take a look at the acoustic guitar one first. But there's a lot of different Jackie King here is an acoustic guitar preset. Excuse me. But the presets are extremely usable on all Universal Audio plugins, and especially the 1176 collection. But we could start with the default setting as well. So basically, just to run through the controls one last time, now that we're looking at one up close, is the input dial here. As you increase the input, you're pushing more signal into the unit, and therefore you're lowering the threshold. The higher you push the input, the more of a distortion characteristic you're going to get based on the input transformers are being modeled. Like we talked about earlier, where in the legacy models that is not the case. So as you push the input more on this new 3 compressor collection, you're going to get more of a harmonic distortion characteristic. And then you have the output, which is the makeup gain. And then you have your release setting down here and your attack up here. And again, remember number 7 on both of the attack and release is a fast setting. Number 1 is a slow setting. And then you have your 4 ratio buttons here, 4 to 1, 8 to 1, 12 to 1, 20 to 1. And if you hold down your shift key and press the 4 to 1 ratio in, all the buttons will be depressed, and that is the all button mode, which we'll take a look at when we do some parallel compression. And then you have your UV meter here, and then over to the right you have the way you want the UV meter to behave. GR meaning it's on gain reduction, which is usually what I keep it on. If you were to click it on off, it will bypass the plugin altogether. But when you click it on the off mode here, the compressor is bypassed. If you were to take the attack and turn it all the way to off, or just click on the off here, what happens there is now you're not hearing there's no compression being done, but what you're hearing is the emulation of the input and output transformers, as we spoke about in the presentation. So that's a unique feature to the new this 1176 collection that was not part of the legacy versions back on the UAD1 platform. You didn't have a way to just hear the input of the compressor. So one common thing that can be used for these compressors is you may not do any compression, but you just run signal through the compressor and you get a nice coloration of the sound because you're modeling those the in and output transformers. So hopefully that makes sense. So let's take a listen to the an acoustic guitar here. We'll bypass it and just you can kind of hear this little section. So basic strummed acoustic guitar with some heavy transients there. You can hear where kind of the beginning of the on the downbeat, you can hear where those strums are coming through quite hard. We're going to poke through the mix, and we're going to use the 1176 to kind of tame that. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to start with a 4-to-1 ratio. We're going to just dial up the input a little bit to start getting some gain reduction, looking for somewhere between maybe 3, maybe 5 dB of compression. And we'll start with a fast release. And then we'll start with kind of a fast attack as well to kind of cut down on those transients, and let's see what we get. So what I'm doing here is shutting the compressor on and off to kind of level match the before and after, so we can get a true picture of what the tonality of the compressor is doing by making sure that our before and after, that the output volume is about the same. So you can hear those, again, on that downbeat, as you have a little bit of a slower attack, the transient's going to poke through a little more, obviously. As you give a more faster attack, it's going to kind of cut down on that transient a little bit. Smooths it out a lot more, that dun, dun. Now if we go to a slower attack, you're going to hear it poke through a little more. You hear how that dun, dun really pokes through the mix with a slower attack a lot more. So the faster attack will kind of tame it a little bit. And right now we're on an 8-to-1 ratio. And as we change the ratio, you're going to change the amount of compression, obviously. It's a 4-to-1 ratio. Bypassed. So this particular model has a nice little open top end feel to it when you engage the compressor. So yes, it's controlling the transients quite a bit as well, but it's also giving it a nice kind of a little bit of grit to it, and a little bit of an open sound. And again, the more we push the input, the more grit you're going to get. Not that you would want that on an acoustic, but just to show you what the effect is. So you're going to get a little bit of a harmonic distortion characteristic there. So it gives a very smooth kind of a feel to it, and it controls the transients kind of nice. So that's the blue stripe. So now if we were to just take a look at one of the other ones here, here's the blackface on the same piece of music. And again, trying to go with a fast, 8-to-1 ratio, fast release, kind of a pretty quick attack. And let's see what that sounds like in comparison. bypassed. So the blackface tends to have a little bit of a warmer sound to it, a little bit more on the low mids to low frequencies, as opposed to the blue stripe, which is a little bit more on the upper mid range to the top end. So this one is a little bit more of a warming effect, a little bit more bottom end to it. Gives a nice warm character to it as well. This is a great compressor for giving just character, smoothing out that performance, but adding just a nice warm bottom end on the blackface. So let's take a listen now to maybe the anniversary edition and see how that's different in any way. Again, they're all going to sound similar, but they're all going to be slightly different in their characteristic. They're not going to be worlds apart from each other. But let's go same 8-to-1 ratio. Let's go fast release, kind of a fast attack, and see what we get here. Still about 7 dB of compression. Again, very similar to the blackface, but with a warmer bottom end. But again, a little bit different characteristic than the blackface, or even the blue stripe for that matter. So it's just they're all slightly different from each other, but they all do a wonderful job at adding that nice character, nice little grit if you push the input a little heavier, and it kind of smooths out the performance and kind of evens out those transients a little bit more. And an acoustic guitar is a very dynamic instrument. You can see above the compressor, the waveform here, how dynamic it really is. It does a really good job of controlling that. So let's now take a look at this on, say, on a lead vocal, on a female lead vocal, just to kind of hear the difference of what we got here. Oh, not this one. This one.
I wish there was some way to start this over again. Maybe make another better kind. Feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Of a feeling like nothing I'll...
Okay, let's take a look at the blue stripe first. We just make the other one, make sure the other ones are turned off here. Okay, so let's take a look at this. And again, let's go with this lead vocal. Let's go on a little bit more of a slower attack. So we're not cutting down on the transient too much. And then let's stick with pretty much a fast release. Maybe we'll do like a 4-to-1 ratio. Let's see what we can do for some compression here by cranking up the input a little bit.
I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell. Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well.
Instantly, as soon as you turn that compressor on, you can hear kind of the way the vocal kind of pulls a little bit forward, and it opens up the sound in the upper mid-range. Again, that's what the blue stripe is kind of known for. So it's great if you have a vocal that's a little bit muddy and you need a little bit more of an, I wouldn't say an airy feel, but a little bit more open top, not real high end, but more of that upper mid-range. The blue stripe is really great for that. And again, if you listen to this vocal, and I'll bypass the compressor for this whole passage, you can hear where there's some lines where the vocal really is going to poke through the mix and kind of get a little irritating to the ear, because it's pretty dynamic in this section. And I'm going to do that once, and then on the second time around, I'll engage with the compressor so you can hear how the blue stripe is going to kind of clamp down on those transients, even though we're using a little bit more of a slower attack to try to even out that performance. So let me go first without any compression at all so you can hear the whole passage, and then as I come around a second time, I'll engage the compressor.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell. Of a I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
Much more even performance, especially at the end of the first line there. So that's really nice, and it really, again, gives a nice open feel to the upper mid-range with the blue stripes. Now let's take a listen to let's shut that one off, and let's open up the blackface, and let's do the same thing. We're going to go first without compression, and then we're going to go with compression, and again, we're going to go with a fast release, kind of a slower attack. We're going to go, again, a 4-to-1 ratio. What were we doing in this other one? The other one did a 4-to-1, yes. So let's do a 4-to-1 ratio. And let's get about the same thing, about 7 dB of compression, and see what we have. So the first playthrough will be with no compression.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell. Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
So again, the difference here is you don't have as much of an open upper mid range as you do. It has a nice warming effect, the blackface. You can hear a little bit more bottom end, and we'll compare all three in a second. So again, a little bit different characteristic, but it also smooths out that performance at the end of that first phrase where the vocal kind of pokes through a little too much. And again, we're doing about 7 to 10 dB of compression there, so it gives a nice character to this vocal. So let's listen to that one more time without and then with.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
With.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
So real nice and warm sounding. Sounds beautiful on that female vocal. So now let's shut that off and let's listen to the anniversary edition. And let's try the super slow attack mode, which is different, which is in addition to this. And then we'll play with a couple different attack times just to see how that slow attack affects. Do a fast release again as we were before. And then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We will do the first passage without and then with, so you can hear the difference.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
With.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again.
Should turn the compressor on, shouldn't I? Let's replay that passage with. Sorry about that.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
And notice on the slow attack mode in this particular version, the anniversary edition, you notice the compression isn't as much because it is such a much slower attack than the other two. The other two, with the same kind of input settings and output settings, we were getting almost 10 dB of compression. Here we're only getting between 5 and 7 because the attack is slower. So again, we'll do without and then with.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
With.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
A little bit faster attack.
Of a feeling like nothing
A little more compression.
I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
One more time without.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
With.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
Does a beautiful job of really controlling the transients on the word of in the beginning, the first line of, and the word like, how those poke through the mix quite a bit with this compressor, kind of smooths it out perfectly. So that's the anniversary edition. So now if we were to just do something really quick here, without making this video way longer than it needs to be, if I bring up all three compressors here, oops, and just kind of toggle between back and forth between the three just to see if what the differences are sonically. And again, they're going to be similar, but they are different though, for sure. So the top being the blue stripe, the middle being the blackface, the bottom being the anniversary edition, and I will bypass the plugin up here at the top. We'll start with the blue stripe, and then we will move to each passage. I will switch compressors and see if we can hear the difference. So let's just take a look. Where are we in our loop here? Let's kind of shift these around. Sorry for moving the compressors all over the screen on you. Okay, so we're going to start with the blue stripe, and then we're going to go to the blackface and then to the anniversary. The blue stripe is up first.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
Blackface.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
Anniversary.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
Let's go to the blue stripe.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
Blackface.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
Anniversary.
Of a feeling like nothing I'll probably ever feel again. Oh well. Oh hell.
So as you can hear, they're all very similar, but they all are slightly different from each other from a tonality characteristic, sound characteristic. My personal feeling on this vocal, if I played with this a little bit more, is I kind of like the anniversary edition on this female vocal more than I like the other two, but the other two sound great as well. So it all depends what you like. So now let's just take a look at one last thing, and then I'm going to let you guys go here. We're going to put the blackface on our parallel drum compression, show you how we're going to kind of use the all buttons mode, which is a thing that a lot of engineers do with parallel compression. So let me see if I can solo up these drums pretty quick, at least the kick and the snare and the overheads here. Keep in mind too that this session, the tracks you've been listening to in the drum tracks as well, none of this stuff has been processed. These are raw tracks. Mix has not been done. I'm throwing this compressor on completely unprocessed, raw recorded tracks. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So what we're going to do is what is pretty famously done with this compressor is to use set up a secondary bus for your drums. So all my drums, in this case kick, snare, overhead, are all going down to a drum bus. And then from there I'm going to send those elements of that drum kit also to a parallel compression bus, and on that parallel compression bus we're going to put the 1176. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to send all of the drums over to this what I'm calling a P drums for parallel drum compression bus, and I'm going to just copy that over to these three tracks. Okay, and then from there that's going to go, and that's going to be independent of the volume of the fader volume on the individual track. That's why you do it as a send it over to the parallel compression bus, which has the 1176. Now the way you get into all button mode is you hold down your shift key and click the 20:1 ratio, and you can see all the buttons go in depressed. If I just click on the number 4, 8, 12, 20, if I click on the 20, they all go into all buttons mode, which is going to give you kind of a more extra distorted kind of a vibe. And on drums, I like to go with a fast release and a fast attack to kind of really a slow attack and a fast release to kind of let the transient poke through to kind of give. I'm just going to show you what the parallel bus sounds like. I'm going to mute the actual drum bus, and what we're going to do is we're going to play back the drums and just crank up the input to get some heavy compression going here. I should probably unmute that. Okay, this is just the parallel track. Crank up the input a little. Here, you get that nice distortion. Here, you get some nice distortion. It brings up the level of the overheads. You hear the room kind of come into play. Now, what a lot of people will do now is they'll take that track. I'm going to lower this parallel. I'm going to take the volume all the way down. I'm just going to bring up the drum bus here for a second. So all you hear is the normal dry drums. Okay, now I'm going to bring the parallel track in underneath this drum kit. Okay, without parallel compression. With. Without. Hear how the snare and the kick get a lot more lively. You can hear more of the room in the overhead. So it kind of adds a little bit of fatness, a little bit of grit, a little bit of distortion characteristic to the drum track. And when you blend these two together, when you have a full mix up and running and everything is mixed, where you it'll tend to add more punch and more liveliness to the overall drum sound without sounding compressed. So it's a great trick where you want to add some density and some real grit and some excitement to your drum track. One trick to use is a parallel compression drum track. Throw an 1176 on there in all buttons mode with a fast release and a slow attack, and go ahead and crank it up and give it some of that real grit over compressed sound, and then blend it in underneath the original drum tracks on the drum bus, and it sounds really good. So one last time before and after, just by muting and unmuting the parallel compression drum track, you can hear how the kick and snare get a lot more fat and full, and the whole drum kit sounds a little bit more edgy. Okay, so hopefully that's a good trick for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video on the Universal Audio 1176 plugin collection. For more information on this, go out to the Universal Audio website and research them, check them out. And if you're not sure about how to get involved in Universal Audio plugins, if you've never used them before and you want to know more about the hardware, go to my YouTube channel and search the playlist. There is a whole 30-minute tutorial on the whole system overview of Universal Audio and what the hardware cards are and all the different details you'll need to know before getting involved in these plugins. But if you want more tips and tricks and more training on mixing and mastering, go over to homerecordingmadeeasy.com and check out the Made Easy series. I think you'll really dig those. And again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. I hope you enjoyed this review of the 1176 plugin collection by Universal Audio. Again, we just scratched the surface of what this 1176 collection can do. But as you can see, there's lots and lots of endless possibilities, and it really adds nice warmth, nice analog character, and is a spot-on emulation of the hardware. And I know because I've used the 1176 hardware for many, many years, and these things, I can tell you, are spot-on to the hardware form factor, and they sound amazing. And if you don't have an 1176 in your plugin toolbox, you should get them because they are a great addition to any mixing engineer's toolkit. So until next time, this is David from homerecordingmadeeasy.com and visionrecordingstudios.com, and I will talk to you guys all soon. Thank you again, and take care.